Hi, I'm Phillips. In this video, I'm going to show you how to set out, cut and install Trepanel's Walnut Wood Effect LVT flooring in this bathroom. In the Herringbone effect, this stone plastic composite SPC is ultra durable LVT build. It's scratch, dent, stain resistant for high traffic areas. It's also waterproof. It won't swell, warp or buckle, so it's perfect for bathroom areas. Each plank size is 710mm in length and 142mm in width. All four edges have the click lock system, so it can be taken apart as well as locked together, and it also has a built-in underlay on the bottom, meaning it doesn't require a separate underlay. The overall depth is only 5mm high, so it doesn't intrude on the floor height. Most of the time it can be installed and it'll slide underneath your opening doors without having to remove them and cut them down. The click and lock method on the joints is easy, fast and very, very effective. You can see the strength of that holding it together as it stands. Of course, you've got them on all four edges. Now, you could run a straight run of these planks if you prefer, but it's designed as a herringbone effect, which will allow also the edges then to click in and connect that way. Okay, so you have got different choices of which pattern that you want to create for your flooring. Now, before you start to install your planks, make sure that your floor is clear, dust-free, and you've scraped up any old silicone that may be on the surface beforehand. Once you've removed all debris, you're ready then to start setting the floor out. Now, setting the area out and finding where you fit your first tile is very important, because that dictates where the rest of them are going to go. And like with most flooring products, you'd start by finding the center of your room, drawing a line up there, and then working your way out with your products. That way you're going to get an equal cut either side and it looks symmetric on the eye. Now you've got the center of the room marked out. I'm going to take one plank and place it on my center line. Take the second plank and line that up at a 90-degree corner. Start to place the corners along this line. And we take our third plank, slip these into the groove, and they're starting to hold them together now. We take a fourth plank and again interlocking and clipping them into the groove, and already they've started to form and hold themselves together there. So my top point is on this line. This point now I want to keep it in line here. Take a fifth plank, placing it down, and then a sixth plank and placing it down and into position here. Okay, so now we have our planks across there. The next stage, what I need to do is cut a line across here. So I'll take a tape measure and I'll measure this one, which we know is 710, because that's the size of the planks. I'll transfer that measurement to 710 over here. And mark it on this side. And that measurement from there to there, or the angle should I say, is going to be cut. That forms the straight edge which will go butt up to my wall. I'll talk about expansion gaps in a moment, and also a border that some people, when they do a herringbone effect, they prefer to have a border around the outside, but I'll touch on that in a moment. But this is the position we want at the moment. These boards are going to be wasted. They can be used up elsewhere as offcuts around, so you're not completely wasting them. But this is our cut-off point.
There's a number of ways these LVT planks can be cut. However, when I'm cutting angles like this to start with, I normally use my jigsaw. but you can still achieve the perfect cut using a good sharp handsaw or a vinyl guillotine cutter if you happen to have one.
So that's my first 5 pieces cut now, creating my triangle shape, and when they're interlocked together they're going to get pushed back up against the wall. Now don't panic at this point when you look down and see you have got a lot of offcuts, and I know you're thinking about wastage, of course. Don't throw these away. Some of these, not all of them, will be able to get used when we come to the outside edges, the cuts against either side of the wall, they can be used. So keep them to one side.
Start to click these sections back together. There's also useful instructions on the packaging that they came in, showing you the size and shape of the cuts on both the left and right hand side planks, which forms your herringbone starting point.
Now, one thing to bear in mind, when you look at the back of these boards, although they all look the same, we have actually got an L and an R, meaning left and right, of course. So now we've got our centre triangle cut and pushed up to the wall. We then have to open our packs and separate them so you've got your left and your right hand side ones, or else you won't find the interlock. 2 sides do and the other side doesn't, third side doesn't at this point. So separate them from left to right, and then you can start working through the centre. Now I've put that flat up against the wall. I am going to move it further out and create an expansion joint, but not at the moment. I will do it later on. What I am going to do is concentrate on working up the centre of the room by placing these into position and following my line. Once I've got that kind of spine of the floor all the way in there, then I can start working my way out. So this one should clip into here, making sure you're on your centre line there. Once that's locked in, this one should now lock into here. Click and lock. Then you've got 2 more on, and then we continue to do the same as that. The next one, which again comes to your centre point here. There we go. That's locked in.
Then continue the pattern by fitting the left and right hand side planks all the way down the centre of your line that you marked on the existing floor earlier, interlocking each joint on the planks. I find using a lightweight rubber mallet helps me interlock some of the tongue and groove joints. Continue this with the full planks until you get to the end of the room. We'll come back to the cuts later.
Now the first run of planks are in position and we've got the herringbone effect. What I'm going to do is form my expansion gap along the bottom. So I've got these small plastic spaces. You can put them together and make it a little bit wider. But all we really need on a floor this side, I mean, we're only 3 metres that way and pretty much 4 metres that way. Normally around about 6 to 10 millimetres will be fine with this type of material. So what I do now is I get myself a pulling bar. I place that in. There. Bring it down the back. With a gentle tap. And it's pulling that away from that wall, getting that gap that I wanted.
The expansion gap will of course be covered later with either skirting boards or wall boards.
And that'll allow me then to put my packs just in the back of there to hold it in nice and tight, and one in there. There we go. And that should hold that now into position. What I have to do now is undo some more of my boxes, take out my left and right panels and swap them around. Because remember, this run here was the right, that one was the left. Now we've got to form a left running up here and a right running up that way. Now this row here are lefts, double check they are a left, and that row there is a right hand side and that'll go there. I'm not starting from the back of the wall now and working my way up on this row. I'm going to start from the top of the room and work my way down here. Now another way of getting these in, if you're finding you're struggling a little bit, is you can get the long run in here by tipping it on an angle, and then of course it drops down flat, it's gripped and it's anchored, it won't pull out. But now you've got to pull it along and get the same hook hooked underneath this piece here. So you pull it up as far as you can like this, keeping it in that position, drop it down so it's butt up to it, lift that one up a fraction, and that allows that one to go under it. And then if you use yourself a little pulley bar, you can place that on, it's going to hook onto the one edge there. I put a little bit of weight, not a lot of weight on it, lift that one up so it allows it to slide underneath. There's a little bit of flex in it, just what you need. And then gently just tap that into position, and that should, there we go, it's hooked underneath there now, the little gap, pull them together, and one little tap and they've locked. There we go. They're now locked in here and in here, nice and tight.
Trepanel's easy click lock installation system is fast, glue-free and low maintenance, stain resistant and won't warp or buckle. The Walnut Herringbone effect has 34 unique face variations that has a real classic timeless charm wood effect floor, enhancing thermal insulation as well as the same time delivering luxury, contemporary and elegance with an anti-microbial UV finish.
Now this full run is in and complete. It's formed my angle here to be able to do my cuts. That's going that way, then this next one needs to come along here. So we make sure it is part of this length, whether it's your left or your right hand side pieces, which is there. And then we take a measurement from here, transfer that from this edge, the one that interlocks into here. Your measurements at home, of course, will be different. And then we place that in there temporarily, make a little mark on the wall, just here. Take our tape measure from that over to here, 445. So now 445 is measured from here. Double check before you cut it. That's the angle from there. Use a straight edge. Now, with any luck, if my measurements serve me correctly, this should fit in there, in that groove first, in top of there. Locked in with an expansion joint at the back. Now, of course, we do the same there and then there until we end up with a small triangle, which will be pretty much the same as our center point there. And that'll, same thing will apply on the opposite side.
This may be the area where you start to use some of your offcuts so they don't go to waste. Mark them out, chop them down with your guillotine cutter if you have one. Place it down, a couple of gentle taps with the pulling bar should pull it into position. Now I'm going to turn my attention to the side cuts of the room, from one corner all the way down to the other, making sure you allow for a small expansion gap of around 6 to 10 millimeters, placing the odd plastic packer in between the gaps to avoid any movement whilst you're installing. Then you can jump back over to the other side of the room, continue with your full planks until you get back to the starting wall, where you're going to need to form the small triangular cuts again to meet the flat wall. Then go back to the side cuts, just like the opposite side. But don't forget, try to use any offcuts to avoid waste.
Now this next offcut is scribed to the shape of the wall, allowing for a 10mm expansion gap in there. However, when it comes to put it in place, we have the door casing and the architrave around it, which is standing proud. And of course, it won't slip under. So there's a couple of ways around this. Some people prefer to take them off and cut it down and then sit it back on. I prefer to leave them into position and maybe cut a little piece off the bottom of it. The third alternative is you get a jigsaw and you scribe the shape around it and you cut around. But if you do that method, you have got to remember you still have to leave between a 6 and a 10 millimeters expansion gap around the bottom of that. So I prefer to just slice a little bit off the bottom and slide your actual plank underneath. And how I do that is I place a saw like this, which will take me up another millimeter above, allow the plank to slide in and out, and then I put another saw on the top. The one underneath is protecting this board, so we're not actually scratching or cutting into this. I'm leaving it in position. It's not locked in, but I'm just leaving it into position so we've got the correct height and it will fit once it's cut. Here we go. There we go. So that now has come out, and that's my piece there came out. Now hopefully that, there we go, slides right underneath there. You've got enough for the expansion joint. Once that's locked into these three sides, it gives me the expansion joint here that I need and enough space under there. When you've finished, of course, you'd be running your silicone then around the edge, or maybe a bead over the expansion joint, and then you'd silicone around the cut at the bottom of the door. That's my waterproof LVT flooring now complete, installed in a herringbone effect. Now hopefully I've inspired you to fit your own flooring. But if you're looking for more inspiration, don't forget to follow us on all social media handles and subscribe to the YouTube channel. But if you just want to know more about the vast range of products that Walls and Floors offer, head straight over to their website, wallsandfloors.co.uk.